Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live stream. My name is Alan Collins. I'm the founder of StudentLoanJustice.org. We are the oldest, largest, and pretty much only group actually fighting for student loan justice. We've been around since 2005. We've been featured on 60 Minutes, on NPR, on PBS, in Rolling Stone, in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, and Fox News, and Al Jazeera, and CCTV, and many, many, many other places. For the first 15 years of our existence, we were fighting very moderately for the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. The founding fathers felt that bankruptcy protections were so important, they actually called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution, not the Bill of Rights, the Constitution itself. And there was a good reason for that. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Robert Morris, many of the other founders were being savaged under predatory debt to British banks and merchants. So the Declaration of Independence was a document about economic emancipation as much as it was about religious freedom and other types of freedom. And indeed, if you look at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise an army, you will see very clearly the call for uniform bankruptcy laws. So that's been taken away uniquely from student loans, folks. Student loans are the only type of loan in our nation's history to be uniquely stripped of, uniform bankruptcy protections. So I don't know why they chose to pick on, by definition, economically disadvantaged college students to withhold equal protection under the law, and also, to inflict upon us the predatory lending system that has resulted from the absence of standard bankruptcy protections. But that's the reality. So here we are. But I'm here to tell you, folks, that we've been doing this for 15 years now. And I can tell you with some authority that at this point, it is a failed lending system. Capital F, failed. It is over the cliff. It's done. Put a fork in it. This lending system is toast, people. A recent, not recent, 2 years ago, Brookings Institution found that of the class of 2004, the default rate for those federal student loans was at least 40%. And by the way, that data was based on a voluntary survey. Now, if you're a defaulted borrower, are you going to just happily voluntarily complete a survey about your student loans? No, you're probably not. So that 40% mark that was found by Brookings based on education department data was probably pretty low. But whether it's 40% or 50%, the class of 2004 was only borrowing 1/3 of what is being borrowed today. Today, the average undergraduate is leaving college with 39, 40, 41, maybe even closer to $42,000 in student loans today. So if the default rate for 2004 students was 40%, what do you think it is for more recent students? Is it 50%, 60%? Yeah. Is it 70%? Maybe. It could be 70 or 80%. I don't know. It's a failed lending system, people. And by the way, I've spoken pretty recently to the recently resigned Chief Operating Officer of the Federal Lending Program. His name is Wayne Johnson, really a nice guy, very well educated, etc. Well, he came in and ran the lending system for a few months under President Trump and Betsy DeVos. He was an appointee, and he quit. He said, whoa, I'm not doing this. Number one, I resign. Number two, we're going to have to do widespread loan cancellation. That's just the reality. And he, to a lesser extent, also echoed what we have been saying for 15 years, and that is that at a minimum, bankruptcy protections have got to be returned to these loans. And that's not like Joe Blow off the street. That's not like me saying it. And I'm a little bit more accomplished than all that, but this is the head of the lending system, people. So he also told me that 80% of all federal loan borrowers will never be able to repay their loans. They're in default, deferment, forbearance, delinquent. They're not able to pay, or they are paying and their balance is going up, not down, up. So I don't know what more I can tell you to convince you that this is a failed lending system, but look at your own situation. If you know 5 people with student loans, 4 of them, whether they admit it or not, are probably freaking out about their student loans because they fall into the 80 percentile, the large majority of all borrowers who will never be able to completely pay their student loans. So welcome to the new people. We're very glad that you found us. So the point of all that stuff that I just said is to say that we have started a petition on change.org. We are now calling for full-on total loan cancellation by executive order. And there's a reason for that, folks. If you look at the world of student loan cancellation, it turns out, and we love Bernie, we supported him, we love Elizabeth Warren, supported her, but their loan cancellation programs would have never worked. And similarly, there's legislation in Congress right now from Ilhan Omar and others calling for loan cancellation. But folks, I am here to tell you that all of the loan cancellation proposals that we see now will never work. First of all, they probably won't pass Congress, that is. All of them require Congress passing a law that raises $1 trillion, $2 trillion, who knows, some breathtaking amount of money, and then use that money to pay for loan cancellation. You know, in Congress, every time you pass a bill, oh, but how are you going to pay for it? That's what the Republicans always say. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Well, that statement is just nonsense in the first place, people. The taxpayers have already paid 100% for the principal of every single federal student loan that it owns directly. And by the way, that's about 85 or 90% of all student loans. Hey, Annie Nova's here tonight. How you doing, Annie? And by the way, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to pipe up in situ. This is going to be a fairly sparsely attended live stream because for some reason, Facebook has suspended my account. I posted one thing in like 2 places, and all of a sudden, I got suspended, and Facebook said, yeah, we have to keep you safe. Keep you safe. I don't know what that even means. But anyways, that's the fact. So yeah, folks, all the student loan cancellation that you see out there in the zeitgeist is nonsense. The programs that we're seeing, it's like partial forgiveness. Joe Biden's plan is what, up to $10,000. Elizabeth Warren's plan was what, up to $50,000. Nonsense. Whatever makes it through the Washington, D.C. sausage making machine, it will be dumbed down, watered down, and it will be like just very lackluster and unimpressive from the get-go. But here's the cruel, cruel final screw in the coffin, is that after that legislation passes, it will be handed off to the Department of Education, and they will bureaucratize any loan cancellation program given to them by Congress to death. The Department of Education has no desire or intentions of canceling any loans. Look at the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The last time, maybe Annie could back me up on this, the last time I checked, the number of people who actually made it through out of, I think, 140-something thousand people who tried last year, it was like 226 or something, like less than 1%. Everybody else, 99.2% of everybody who worked in a nonprofit for 10 years, thought they were getting their loans forgiven, applied for it when their 10 years came up. They were told that they didn't dot their I's, they didn't cross their T's, they were in the wrong program, something they did wrong. Now, really, 99.2% of many who have probably master's degrees working successfully in the nonprofit sector for decades, 99.2% of those people are just such idiots, they can't navigate their way through a loan repayment program. Really? Really? Are we really supposed to believe that? Similarly, about 5 years ago, we found that a whopping 57% of the people in the income-based repayment program had been booted out on just one grounds, that the Department of Education and its contractors has available to it to kick people out of these programs. It was, what was it? It was income verification. So yeah, 57%, and that was 5 years ago, folks. So my best estimate is that, like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, if even like 5 or 10% make it through successfully the IBR program, where they get hit with a tax for the forgiven amount, by the way, I'll be stunned. The Department of Education does not roll that way. They hate canceling loans. Look at the defense to repayment rule, the borrower defense rule, where if your crappy for-profit college lied to you, then supposedly you're supposed to get your loans canceled. Well, here we are, like it's been 3-4 years of the Department of Education fighting lawsuit after lawsuit about not canceling these loans. We've had a federal judge threaten Betsy DeVos with jail time lest they start canceling these loans. And I'm here to tell you, folks, we've seen the Department of Education in action for years and decades. And almost nobody is going to get their loans canceled through the borrower defense to repayment program. They just aren't. The Department of Education has decided they do not want to follow that rule, as they similarly decided that they would not follow the gainful employment rule or any other rules to be thrown upon them by the president or Congress. And that's how it goes. That is what happens. So can we really trust the Department of Education to take $1 or $2 trillion through the Bernie Sanders plan or the Elizabeth Warren plan and actually start canceling loans? No, we cannot. The only way that we're going to see loan cancellation in this country, number one, quite frankly, I think it starts with you and me stopping payment and vowing to never, ever, ever, ever repay another dime. Frankly, at this point, right now, as we speak, almost nobody is repaying on their student loans. And if this is a fair country at all, and if we have our way at all, my true hope is that everybody out there has made the last payment they will ever make on their federal student loans. So, as I said, we started a petition on change.org. You yourself can go to change.org/cancel student loans, capital C, capital S, capital L, and you can see it and sign it and share it for yourself. Very happy to tell you that we now have over 300,000 signatures on that petition. So that's not nothing, folks. And remember, we're not a well-resourced group like other groups pushing fake, nonsensical student loan cancellation proposals. We don't have a marketing team. We don't have a bunch of hired guns to do marketing for us. None of that stuff. The only strength we have is our grassroots strength, our personal strengths, skills, talents, networks as individuals, as blades of grass in this movement. And so really the onus is on us to pull more than our weight, to punch a little above our weight. And so I can only urge you all that if getting these student loans gone are important to you at all, you will turn away from the fakes, from the charlatans in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere saying, oh yeah, I'm fighting for student loan cancellation. Oh yeah, for sure. Look at our bill. Cancel up to $50,000, blah, 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 blah. Nonsense. It will never pass. If it does pass, it will never, ever, ever work. A presidential executive order will work. No tax required, no tax appropriation from Congress, not one additional dime, in fact, of tax money will be required to cancel these loans. In fact, no money will even change hands. Now, that's important. Maybe what's more important in the fiscally stimulative world that we now find ourselves in is that this will also not add one penny to the national debt. Now, can you think of a better way to stimulate the economy where you don't need one dime of tax money over and above what's already been paid into these loans by the taxpayer and not add one nickel to the national debt? There is nothing. I mean, we could sell off the national parks. We could sell nuclear weapons to North Korea. I don't know. I can't think of an easier way to stimulate our economy. I don't think there one exists. So again, we are the pioneers, folks. This argument that we're making is universally, uniquely, supremely important, but it's not going to get out into the zeitgeist unless you help us. So this week, we're asking everybody out there to contact a news organization. Let them know about the petition. Student loan cancellation is in the zeitgeist right now, and all of the plans that are being talked about, written about, aired, etc., they're all that first class of loan cancellation. It's just nonsense. Ours is the only viable, feasible, effective, and I would say well-targeted way to cancel loans. And make no mistake, we're not President Trump fans. We're not Republicans. We are a completely nonpartisan group. But whether it's this president or the next, only the entity of the president can do this without costing the taxpayers any money, without adding to the national debt. And by the way, my suspicion, and I'm pretty smart on the student loan program, but I do not know, and in fact, nobody knows, even lifelong analysts at the Department of Education can say for sure, but of the $1.5 trillion of outstanding federally held student loans, my best guess is that 3, 4, maybe 500 billion is actually unpaid principal. The rest is interest and fees and penalties baked into new principal, which then accrued more interest, etc. So my point is, the large majority of the federal student loan portfolio is error. It's gravy. It's nonsense. It's fiat. It's not real. And by the way, the federal government was never going to recoup that money in the first place. They just weren't. As I said, nobody is paying on their student loans now. And based on all the stuff that I said at the beginning of this live stream, my best guess, I mean, really, if you think that many or possibly even any borrowers are going to happily resume making their student loan payments come September 30th, I disagree. You know, I think there is a good chance, and who knows what's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 months, but something's going to happen, and whatever it is that happens, it probably won't be great for student loan borrowers. And so even if the economy was as great as it was pre-COVID, you put a 6-month suspension on paying, and you're going to lose a lot of payers. You know, I think there's a very good chance that no one will, nor should they, resume making their student loan payments when this thing is up. Do not feed the beast. You know, as I said, we fought very hard for the very moderate solution of returning bankruptcy protections to student loans for 15 years. 15 years. We fought the good fight. We gave it our best. And to our credit, we now have 2 great bills in both House and Senate, S 1414 and HR 2648, that would indeed repeal the one line of federal code that makes student loans different from all other loans in bankruptcy court. But dudes, I'm telling you, at this point, it's too late. It's a failed lending system. They could return bankruptcy protections tomorrow. And all that would accomplish would be forcing 10, 15, 20 plus million people into bankruptcy court. Now, is that really something that we want to do as a country? You know, every year on average, only about 1 million people file for bankruptcy. Do we really want to blow that up and make it like 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 million people a year? Overload the courts, overwhelm the courts, and more importantly, force 10, 15, 20 million people into bankruptcy? Is that a good way to impress the voters? And by the way, people, the big numbers are absolutely gargantuan. There are 55 million people in the country right now who either have or are co-signed on student loans. Based on what Wayne Johnson told me, 80% of these 44 million people are freaking out about their student loans. They will never be able to repay them. So if you're sitting there suffering in silence, thinking you're the only one, and you're sitting on your hands and you're waiting and you're watching and you're worrying and you're praying, and prayers are great. But I'm telling you folks, phone calls are great. What really pushes Congress is you pushing Congress. You know, we've got nearly enough people to elect a president outright, and they should be on this group right here. I mean, believe me, folks, if I knew of any other group out there that was actually, honestly, truly fighting for actual student loan justice, I would take this banner down and I would join them. But there are not. There is only us. And I don't want to put any more pressure on you, but that's a fact. So you've got a little bit of a responsibility here, not only to yourself, but to the tens or even hundreds of millions of people to follow in our footsteps. You know, the founding fathers are looking down upon us And I think they are saying something like, how did our people get so weak? How are they laying down? Why are they so afraid of their government? You know, when the people fear the government, that is tyranny. When the government fears the people, however, that is liberty. And I take those, I think John Adams said that, I take those words quite seriously. John Adams also said there are two ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by the sword. The other is by debt. So think about that, folks, and think about what your situation is now. Do you feel free under this oppressive, never-ending, inescapable, unconstitutional, vicious, hyperinflationary, predatory debt? No, you don't. This is not the freedom that our founding fathers and many other of our forefathers, our ancestors and others fought and died for. And, I don't want to sound corny or anything, but the nation truly needs you on this. And as I said, going forward, probably the least patriotic thing that you could do is to begin resuming payments on your student loans. Don't feed the beast. Help us fight instead. We've got to get this off our backs. I know that sounds like a pretty radical thing to say. And believe me, folks, we've been around a long time. And by our measure, that is a radical thing to say. But it is true. It is the reality. And I'm not going to run from it anymore. This is a failed lending system. It could have a good outcome where, the president does what we need him to do, acknowledge that it is a failed lending system, push the reset button on it, wipe the slate clean, take the lending system to the bathtub and drown it, in the words of Grover Norquist. Or it could have a really bad ending where the Department of Education dusts off its federal SWAT teams, revs up its armored personnel vehicles that it procured a few years ago, and its stock of shotguns and ammunition that it also procured a few years ago, believe it or not. And maybe they'll start coming into our homes with no-knock federal warrants again, like they did in Texas, believe you me. We know about one guy, but we also know that just within this one federal district in Texas, they had plans to arrest 1,500 similar student loan borrowers. I know that sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to me coming out of my mouth. But Google federal marshals, student loans in like Texas, and you can see the story for yourself. My point is, folks, this could have a very ugly ending where the swamp, the student loan swamp, with all their claws and tentacles, are unleashed on this country. And that's not going to be pretty. It's probably going to be violent. And we don't want that. So we want the good thing, the good solution. And the good solution is what I just said. So the last thing I will say tonight, folks, is that the most important thing you can possibly do right now is get as many people as you know with student loans, and maybe even many who do not, to sign and share our petition. Call a media company, let them know. They need to report on this petition. This is very deserving of being in the public discourse when it comes to talking about student loan cancellation. Almost nobody is talking about it. Now, to our credit, we've gotten some coverage. We've been in, let's see, at this point, we've been on like Fox News Radio, Minneapolis, Progressive Radio, C-SPAN, and like Status Quo, and we've done interviews all over the place. But this is a way that you can help. So please do that. Please alert the media, as they say, because it's time for this. And quite frankly, I think Donald Trump maybe watches like one or two channels only. But it's important that we make it to that top tier of, shitty cable news network media, pardon my French. No offense, but I'm not a big fan of Fox News or ESPN or CNN or MSNBC or any of the cable news networks these days. They've done a horrible job on reporting the student loan issue. But we need to get there. We need to get this into the conversation, and hopefully it will pique the president's ears, and he will give it very serious consideration. If not this president, the next. Because I'm telling you, folks, this lending system is toast. So if you were going to fight for student loan justice for your own loans, over the tens or hundreds of millions of people to follow in our footsteps, now would be the time. So have a great night and keep us posted. We love to hear success stories about your efforts out there in the country. We like to brag on those sorts of things to inspire our other members. So do it to it, and we are here to support you in any way we can. Peace.